Really. I'm inclined.
I move the council move into a closed meeting to discuss matters covered by the community charter under sections 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality, or another position appointed by the municipality. E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. G, litigation of potential litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose. And 92B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations, I, between municipality and a provincial government or the federal government or both, or between the provincial government or federal government or both and a third party.
Respecting the bylaw. Each speaker will have 5 minutes and will not be given a second opportunity to speak till all those who wish to speak have been heard a first time. No one will be discouraged or prevented from making their views known. However, it is important that you restrict your comments to the matter of the bylaw and do so in a respectful manner. Criticism and attacks on other people are considered discriminatory and are not permitted. If you are joining the meeting remotely, you can participate by calling 1-833-782-7295 and entering code 220-579-115 followed by the pound sign. Please note that there is approximately a 30-second delay between the public hearing and the webcast. If you are calling in, please be sure to turn the sound off on your device to avoid any feedback noise. I will ensure there is ample time for callers to participate considering the delay. There will be no debate during this hearing. Council's role is to listen to the public views on the bylaw. Staff are present to provide clarification if needed. The intent of proposed bylaw 2783/2025 is to amend City of Powell River Sustainable Official Community Plan bylaw by changing existing modular home park, and modular dwelling references to instead refer to mobile home and mobile home parks. I'd ask the corporate officer, please report on any written submissions received for proposed bylaw 2783 and on anyone who has pre-registered to present.
Point of order, Chair. I think the changes referenced about modular is actually not the right language, and I just wanted to confirm we're actually talking about things related to some other aspects of the official community plan. Am I correct? Okay.
I think that language comes from a previous public hearing on a previous bylaw. This is a different one.
Okay, we'll get that amendment. Thank you, Councillor Isaacson.
Good evening, Council. Through the chair, perhaps I can just summarize the intent of bylaw 2783. So bylaw 2783 is a bylaw that proposes amendments to the City of Powell River Sustainable Official Community Plan bylaw 2370/2014 in order to accommodate the city's 20-year housing need as required under section 473.1 of the Local Government Act that requires the local government to align its official community plan with the findings from the most recent housing needs report received.
Thank you for that clarification. Now, is there any written submissions?
And to the chair, no, there have not been any written submissions received in respect of the bylaw.
Thank you. I will now open the floor to anyone present in council chambers who wishes to step forward to the podium and share their views on this bylaw. You will have 5 minutes to speak. Seeing no one stepping forward, I will ask if there's anyone viewing remotely who wishes to express their views respecting proposed bylaw 2783. Please call in now. When speaking, please state your full name and residential neighborhood, confirming you reside within the boundaries of the city, all of which will be included in the record. Each speaker has 5 minutes to express their views. We have no one? For the second time, is there anyone in council chambers or viewing remotely who wish to express their views on proposed bylaw 2783? For the third and final time, is there anyone present in the council chambers or viewing remotely who wish to express their views on proposed bylaw 2783? Anyone present wish to speak? Hearing none, no further delegations or any other communications or representations regarding proposed bylaw 2783 will be accepted. This public hearing is adjourned. Now move to the public input period. For those that are frequent visitors here, you'll know what is required. We'll repeat that here. So up to 3 members of the public have an opportunity to provide comment for a maximum of 2 minutes on item listed under legislative matters, committee recommendations, or new business. Please come forward and introduce yourself.
I'm Rick Craig with Westview Ratepayers. I want to best of the holidays to all of you, and thank you for all you do. I think it's very important to the community. The comments I'm going to make are not are brief. I'll be brief, but the Westview very strongly supports Get That Boundary, and we want to work to support it happening. So that's something that I think I want to make very clear before I make the comments I'm making now. My comments really have to do with the process around the motion later today that Council is considering regarding the community forest grants. It is our view that we would, we sent a letter, and I think the letter set out our concerns, and we really don't want to see an arbitrary process of decision-making that kind of contravenes your own policy, Policy 261. The councils have created a process by which the community forest adjudicators actually look at grants, make a decision, and recommend them. And they put a lot of work into that. They're all volunteers. And they're very important to the community. And then the people that put in the applications follow the guidelines. And they put a lot of work into that. They put hours into developing them. So it becomes troubling when it appears that a process of moving forward is where a number of them are rejected, or quite a number are rejected. And it's not clear why they're rejected. And I think it's the onus on council, if you're going to reject those recommendations, to inform the grantees that are being rejected, as well as the forest, why it's happening in the community. And I think it's important, if the process isn't working, if you have like 14 recommendations come forward and 8 are rejected, if the process isn't working, then I think you need to talk to community forests about creating a new process. Because why should they put all that energy in and then find out that what comes forward to council is rejected? And so we're asking you to reconsider this motion today, and we're asking that you look for a solution that respects the current process, and if there are problems, move forward on identifying them and address them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Catherine Yorlofson. I live by Grief Point. I first like to say thank you, especially to, I think it's Sundance Topham, for all of these great information on the forestry, the community forest. I do have a comment though, because of the situation that happened earlier this year. And that is that all these, like, this council has got one value that's in our financial plan. And then the cities come up with, something else. And then the forestry people have come up with something else. And it seems to me that we're back at that problem we had where, we thought we had a certain amount of money and then we had a different amount of money. So I'm confused as to why when we have, $425,314 in the plan, that now we're working at two different figures, 560,000 plus or 546,000 plus. Like, if we have a figure, could we not avoid the problem and stick to the figure?
Is there anybody else? If anybody online? Thank you. We'll now move to a consent agenda. Councillor Isaacson.
I move that the December 4th, 2025 consent agenda be adopted.
Councillor Southcott. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Move to item 11, which is legislative matters. Proposed bylaw 2783/2025. Bylaw to amend the City of Powell River Sustainable Official Community Plan. Councillor Isaacs.
I move that City of Powell River Sustainable Official Community Plan 2370-2014 Amendment Bylaw 2783/2025 be read a third time.
Councillor Southcott. Any further discussion?
I don't think we're allowed further discussion after a public hearing, or are we? Sorry, Chief Corporate Officer.
Yes, you can take into consideration the bylaw and in the normal course, any events that or any comments that might have been received from the public. So yes, you're free to debate and decide whether or not you want to.
So could you speak
Pass
a
the
little
reading.
closer into the mic? There may be people online that aren't able to hear you.
I couldn't hear you.
You can't hear me. We both need to speak louder into the mic. All right, we have a motion has been seconded. All in favor? That passes unanimously.
I can continue, Mayor.
You can continue.
I move that the City of Powell River Sustainable Official Community Plan Bylaw 2370-2014 Amendment Bylaw 2783/2025 be adopted.
Second by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Doubt.
I want to make a brief comment so that people that have taken the time to come here out of their busy evenings and get shelter from the rain, so that they know what we're trying to do here. And what we're trying to do is update the City of Powell River's Sustainable Official Community Plan to reflect the ongoing changes in housing markets and their changing population, to make sure there's an opportunity to have enough housing built in Powell River in the future. There's changes to allow for different types of affordable housing, rental housing, special needs housing, etc. There's quite a few significant changes in there, but they all point towards improving our sustainable official community plan. And I encourage anybody who's interested more than that to go find it online and read the actual bylaw and the official information on there and see what we're talking about. But I think it's an important thing to do, and it's part of the work that council's elected to come here and do, and I don't want to skip over it without pointing out that I think we're accomplishing something significant when we move to pass this.
All in favor of the motion? Councillor. Oh, thank you, Councillor Elliott. Motion passed unanimously. We'll now move to 11.2, which everybody has been waiting for. It is the solid waste collection, draft bylaw 2784.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council. The bylaw you have before you includes a couple motions, resolutions that Council asked for. One is to increase the user rates based on the tipping fee increase from Cathet Regional District. The second is including the cost of purchasing recycling carts for the community. And then borrowing that cost from the Water Capital Reserve and paying it back through the revenue received from the utility rates over a period of 5 years. And then a couple more things with the bylaw. We went to include the provision for recycling carts in the bylaw as well to make that update. And in doing so, we also updated quite a few pieces of it just to make it more consistent and make it more clear about just different things within the bylaw as far as authority goes and actually how that works, spell that out. So what you see before you is a bit revamped bylaw. So I would say much improved. I will say that our new corporate officer lent his pen to some good improvements there, so which I think makes it better in the end. And with that, those are the basic updates to the bylaw for you this evening.
Thank you. Do we have any questions on the recommendation from staff? So Southcott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not so much a question, but a comment. I don't think I've ever seen a report with as many track changes as this ever before in my life. And it's quite interesting to read it and see the changes that have been made. It's quite a big change as far as charges go, but I support the purchase of the parts. Personally, I see that as a significant mitigation of the potential for injury. Lifting and twisting of containers is the prime cause of back injuries. In my past experience, I'm also cognizant that this represents the increasing, it's like the chickens coming home to roost as far as waste goes. And as far as I can see, the expense of dealing with waste is increasing. And so it's an opportunity for us to really see how to mitigate that. And organics are definitely, taking organics out of our solid waste is definitely an opportunity. So I'm just hoping that our whole community takes this seriously and takes these increased charges as a reminder. It actually, this is hidden opportunity to reduce costs on solid waste, municipal solid waste in general. So I really appreciate all the work you put into this. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Isaacs.
Yeah, I had one question. There's a new clause 410 about ICIs, or institutional, commercial, and industrial properties authorized by Recycle BC and the manager of operational services to receive supplemental services for recyclables. I'm wondering what the process to be authorized and if there are examples of that. I know the ICI recyclable collection is a big concern in this community, and that I was curious about that one.
Yes, through the chair, and those are very limited. We and specifically in those cases, there are a handful of schools that are on the list that we've been authorized through Recycle BC to collect from. So we've been collecting from those schools. I think there's about 6 or so that we're allowed to collect from with special approval And also our municipal buildings are on that list as well.
Councilor Armita.
Thank you, Mayor. Question, I guess, for staff, probably corporate officer. Section 2, Part H refers to the garbage tags. And we have now made steps over the previous couple of years to move to an automated waste disposal system, but yet we still offer garbage tags as an option to purchase, which seems counterproductive to all the steps we've taken to reduce the chance of injury to our waste removal teams and for very minimal revenue. What I'm curious about is I would imagine if at some point council wanted to eliminate the garbage tag program, would a bylaw change be completely necessary? And I believe this bylaw has to be confirmed by the end of the year, so maybe not enough time to do it now, or if a councillor wished to do that now, is that possible to be stricken before this is read the first, second, third time?
I can answer that through the chair. Maybe give you some background. We typically don't get a lot of customers choosing that route now at all. It used to be the norm in town, but since we moved to carts, it's really extremely dropped off. So I would say probably on a given route, my staff would be able to tell me, probably correct me, but I would say probably a handful, maybe 8 or less on a given day for garbage collection when we do. Out of 800 stops, maybe 8 bags.
Oh, I know it's minimal, and I know previous CFO told me the financial amount was less than $500 a couple of years ago for the entire year, which is why I continue to bring it up, because for the small amount, it seems like a big risk to have one of our staff members potentially they hurt themselves for a minimal amount of revenue to the city.
Councilor Palm.
Yes, thank you through Chair. First of all, Mr. Fraser, I want to thank you for a very thorough report. Outlines the cost associated, and I just wanted to explain to the public. Councillor Southcott made the reference that rates are going up quite substantially. These, which comes through the regional district for municipal solid waste collection, there are tipping fees associated. Those tipping fees, because our garbage is sent out of town, not sure exactly where our organics are going, but they're also leaving our community. All that adds up, and the costs are going up substantially. And I think it's important for the public to realize that in terms of the high increase, now I've lost my page, but they're going up substantially. And part of the cost of going up substantially are the new blue bins that you're going to be receiving in the new year here for your recycling. Instead of the little bin that you use now, you're going to get one that's similar size to your garbage or your organics. So I don't know about you, but I can certainly say for myself, I was a little hesitant on the cost associated with the new bins originally, but they are of great value. Everybody seems to be using them. There's not a lot of problems with bears and everything associated, which we were worried about first. So we've come a long way in this regard for our garbage, organics, and whatnot. And the cost includes for the next, how many years? 4 or 5 years, $26 per year on that tipping fee to pay for those bins. So that's also adds to your additional cost. So it's unfortunate, but I am pointing this out because I think there is a need for this council and our entire region to look at an avenue perhaps where we don't have to send out the garbage and organics out of our community. I hope we can come up with some state-of-the-art technology that will take care of these things and process them in our community so that we can take care of our own, which when I was originally elected was the talk of the day. So I had to say that. I'm hoping we can go down that road in the future, Your Worship, to cut down these taxation costs for these items in our community. Thank you.
Councilor Doak.
I wasn't going to say much until Councillor Palm jumped in, but I think one of the things that out of two that has the most impact in this report is Schedule A, which is the increase in collection fees for garbage and organics and for recycling that are collected by the city and taken to the Resource Recovery Center owned by the regional district for processing from there. So there's an increase in prices there. There are going to be new recycling carts, very similar to the garbage carts that we all have and the organics carts that we have for taking away the compostables. And the staff has found the opportunity to borrow money actually from a water reserve that the city has to pay for those new carts. The price of that's going to be included in a $26 annual repayment for every year for the next 5 years for the people who have those carts. So at the end of the 5 years, the water reserve will be back up to having the money it had before. We'll have carts that'll make the collection easier and safer and better to do. And then everything will go to the Resource Recovery Center and get dumped off at the site there. But it doesn't stop there. And from my history as a regional district director and reading the information, I will tell you that what they do at the Resource Recovery Center is they take those garbage things that arrive and they take a front end loader and they load them into containers. Put the containers on trucks, take them down to the barge terminal. Barge terminal goes down to Richmond or across the river from New Westminster, gets unloaded off of the barges there. They load them onto a train and they go south of the border to the Republic, Washington, in the middle of the dark hole of the state of Washington, where it's dry as a bone, there isn't much rain, and they dump it there in the landfill. And we don't have a landfill here. Other cities that have landfills are finding that they're filling them up, and they're trying to find other places to go and put it. And it's not that easy a program. Most of the federal and provincial regulations don't allow burning. We used to have a huge incinerator. You could still go and see the incinerator down there on the resource recovery site and see what used to happen. There used to be a fire going there all day, and people went and threw the garbage all in there, and we burnt our city's garbage, or the people here did it. So we've moved on a little bit better to that. And I agree with Councillor Palm. We're going to have to one day stop busing and floating and railroad training and taking our garbage to a big hole in the middle of Washington State. Who knows what's going to happen if they should put a tariff on garbage, and we'll have to pay. But there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way, and reducing and reusing and trying to be zero waste is the best I can think of, and try to reduce that to as little as we can. And if for nothing else than to save money, saving the environment, I think, is more important. So.
Yes. So
I move that City of Powell River Municipal Solid Waste Collection Bylaw 2784, 2025 be read a first, second, and third time.
Second by Councillor Almeida. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now move to item 13, which is committee recommendations. 13.1 is the Powell River Community Forest Fall Grants. Chief Administrative Officer, are you?
Thank you, Your Worship. I wasn't actually going to say anything because there's a committee recommendation coming forward from the last committee of the whole, or I should say the committee of the whole before the last committee of the whole. Thank you.
So Southcott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Council approve the fall 2026 Powell River Community Forest Grant for $250,000 to Youth and Family for Foundry, application 385. That Council approve all grants, including the Community Forest recommendation, except for the following applications: 389 Friends of Cathet for $10,000, 391 Timberlane Fine Arts for $54,271, 392 PR Lawn Bowling for $40,000, 413 Gillies Bay Tennis Courts for $40,000, 415 PR Salmon Society for $28,512, 416 Cathet Cycling Association for $37,500, 425 PR Curling Club for $75,000, 428 Kelly Creek Church for $34,550. Council direct staff to amend City of Powell River 2025 to 2029 Financial Plan Bylaw 2751, 2025 to increase the project budget for City of Powell River Project 430 Logger Sports Arena by the amount of $30,000, and to increase the project budget for City of Powell River Project 435 Seawalk Repair Project by the amount of $180,000, with the increases funded by the Powell River Community Forest Reserve Fund, that council directs staff to amend the City of Powell River 2025 to 2029 Financial Plan Bylaw 2751 2025 to include projects approved by council in the spring and fall Powell River Community Forest nonprofit grant intake, with the increase funded by the Powell River Community Forest Reserve Fund.
Seconded by Councillor Isaacson. And what we're going to do in anticipation of comments from council is we're going to start with Council Almeida and circulate around, ending with myself after Councillor Elliott has a chance also to comment. So we'll start with Councillor Almeida.
Nothing at this time, sir. Thank you.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I support this motion. I was involved in putting forward some aspects of this motion in a way that was different from the recommendations from the community forest, and I want to explain a little bit of my rationale for doing so. Earlier this spring, concerns were raised by the community forest and community members about the process we were going about to establish levels of granting and in the spring, and council passed a motion to kind of go back to a previous process. And the previous process that we're seeing now is that we approve grants after the budget is approved, or in this case kind of before, but after the budget is approved, and then make alterations to the financial plan to make those possible, drawing from reserve funds. So we've moved back to that process. We also instituted, in order to improve communications, a working group of members of council to meet with the Community Forest Board to make sure that there's good communication, to get a sense of what council is looking for, and back and forth. In the summer, the Community Forest, through the working group, asked council to indicate some priorities, because they didn't want a situation where there would be maybe edits to their recommendations. So they wanted a sense of priorities from council. And at that time, council indicated, council passed a motion that indicated 4 different priorities: health facilities, affordable housing, recreation and culture for youth, and reconciliation. And those are in line with council strategic priorities. And so we received a number of recommendations from the Community Forest Board, and looking at the recommendations as well as the items that weren't recommended, council went through some deliberations to make motions that are a little bit different from the Community Forest recommendations. And the ones that remain, which are the Brain Injury Society, Brooks Berm Buster Mountain Bike Team Trailer, Powell River Gymnastics Society, Kiwanis Village, West Coast Wind, Powell River Auxiliary, Healthcare Auxiliary, and Foundry, are ones that fit those 4 items. And so my support of those is meant to carry forward the indication that council had about what our priorities are for this fall, and still keep within the envelope that council had previously passed with respect to the level of granting that we were open to this fall. And so my intention is to receive the recommendations of the community forest and then draw them in line with the priorities that council had previously indicated at the request of the community forest. And so that's where I landed. In doing so, it's not that the ones that are not recommended, I don't appreciate the good work that the community organization, those community organizations do, because they do excellent work. But I'm looking at this as an overall big picture of the financial situations of the city and alternative community-based projects or community benefit projects the city might have to engage in, especially related to the rec complex. So it is a bigger picture. Each of these organizations is deserving individually, but my duty as a councillor is to look at the large financial picture in the future of the city and trying to do some math, and that's where I landed. And so I support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Worship. I've given this a lot of thought, and I put my thoughts down on paper, so I'm going to read this. There's a current condition that money taken from the Powell River Community Forest Reserve without it affecting the city's overall long-term financial picture, essentially its bottom line. I believe this is a misconception in the minds of many local taxpayers. We need to have a whole system and long-term perspective. The draft budget council considered yesterday gives us that. It's also clear to me that the city revenues contribute generously to the social wealth and well-being of this whole regional community, like the community forest fund does. Permissive tax exemptions, grants and aid, including the city's contributions through the QRD's general grants and aid, grants in kind, contribution agreements, and the community forest grants all are in the budget. And all of that added together totals over $2 million of value to the community benefit, including nonprofit organizations, which is a lot more, relatively speaking, than most BC communities. But we're isolated and we don't get to lean on the communities of neighbors. The real wealth of our community is our social wealth. This is our culture. It goes back to before the city was incorporated 70 years ago, and 20 years after that, when the complex was created, the mill still paid more than half of the city taxes. Our city is now facing a monumental change. The end of the industrial tax rate on mill lands is the end of this era, and it's been looming for a long time. It's also clear to me that increasing numbers of people here and everywhere are having increasing challenges with affordability, and city taxes are a significant part of that. City councilors' fiduciary responsibilities are our most serious responsibility. We must now adopt a whole and long-term perspective, not pretending we can take money out of one part of the picture without affecting the city's overall picture. And we faced a lot of criticism for that over the past year and a half, which is why I'm making an issue of it now, because it's very pertinent to this agenda item. Previous council saw this looming challenge and capped permissive tax exemptions. They also hosted a finance advisory committee that really didn't recommend many cuts. But this year's budget report on page 45 has a whole list of cuts that could be made. And it's a really good read for a glimpse of what council is facing. It's painful. One of the items is a complex pool, and most of the rest of them are just as hard to swallow. The only viable way forward I see is to regard the city's fiscal picture as a whole, and I feel the budget does a good job of that. It's going to mean a lot more hard decisions. It means we can only afford what we can pay for. My position on the Community Forest Reserve is just that it is just one part of this whole picture, but it's a part of the whole picture we must now see as a whole, because it and the fact that we are one community is our reality. That's why I support this motion, Your Worship. Thank you.
Councillor Doubt.
Oh, okay. I've been thinking about this for quite a few days too. And I have an amendment to make. And the amendment I want to do is from the word except for the following applications and going down to the next paragraph that's remove the words going down to the next paragraph that starts that council directs staff. I want to remove those words, and if there's a seconder for that, I'd like to talk about what that would do. Okay.
Councillor Palm.
I'm gonna read this out, and I don't normally try to read out these long worded things, but I want people to understand what I'm doing. I'm suggesting that we remove the words from the motion that we previously moved, and the words are except for the following application: Friends of Cathette, Timber Lane Fine Arts, Lawn Bowling, Gillies Bay Tennis Courts, Salmon Society, Cathette Cycling Association, Powell River Curling Club, and the Kelly Creek Church. Now, I would have preferred that we stay within the guidelines that we set for council on the community forest donations to nonprofits. But the Community Forest Board, who we have appointed and asked to go through and to vet all of these applications and to look at which ones meet their criteria, which ones don't, and should be and recommend back to us. We've got a group of concerned citizens who actually spend a lot of time doing the physical and mental work and consulting with all of the people who apply for the grants. I see some of them in the room, making sure they fit the programs, to make sure they fit the guidelines, do all that. Now, they do that on behalf of council, so council doesn't have to do that work, and I appreciate that. But they recommended that we include those. They didn't recommend that we include the grant to the Foundry. And I see, as just as many others do, the value of the Foundry and what they can do. I remember we were having actual community consultation groups about the official community plan, which we're going to update the whole thing one of these days. But all of the young people that were there were telling me about the need for a community gathering place for young people to go to after school, and the mall had closed and before they wanted to go home, and how necessary it is to have a community gathering place and a way to get together. So I'm making this resolution. I didn't add the total up, but I think it comes to about $250,000, very close to the money that was agreed to contribute to the Boundary project. We have, as we talked about yesterday in our program, financial program, $17 million in the Community Forest Reserve. Spending $250,000 more for this fall 2025 grants from the Community Forest is not going to break the Community Forest Reserve. It's not going to cause a huge disruption. We are going to have to adjust the way we calculate what the taxation is, but there has been a lot of discussion in the community over the last couple of years about taking the entire community forest funds that they earn every year and putting that towards reducing taxes. That might happen one of these days. But I'm thinking that what I would like to see council do, we'll see if it's supported or not, is approve all of those grants that were recommended to be approved by the community forest and grant the grant as well to the Foundry. It's kind of a middle ground there. We're going a little bit in a way I wouldn't like to go, but we're moving together. So perhaps council will adopt this, perhaps they don't, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Mayor. Our CFO is here. Okay. Based on my calculations from Councillor Dutz.
Are you seconding the amendment?
We
can discuss it.
Already was second, so we're up for debate.
Sorry, Councillor Palm. Thank you.
Yep. So based on the motion on the table, I calculate that just under $320,000. Mr. Bjorgaard shared last night that $268,000 equates to 1% of a tax increase. So, Mr. CFO, is that safe to say that if we approve this motion, which adds another $320,000 to the community forest grants, would that be a 1 point something percentage tax increase for next year added to the budget.
Through the chair, since the funding for these additional grants would come from a reserve, there's no impact on taxation. But there's always alternative uses for funds that could be directed elsewhere to assist in the city's overall financial picture.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so there's not a direct impact to taxation next year, but it's potentially an impact to taxation in the hypothetical future where, for example, we have a large project that we want doing, we need a certain amount of funds, and that money comes from taxation, from grants, community forest dividends, and the reserve, and other reserve funds. There's a finite pot where we can draw from. And so if we don't want to use community forest for community benefit projects that are city focused, like the rec complex, then we have to get that money elsewhere. And if grants aren't available, that's taxation. So it's not an immediate impact, but there's an opportunity cost, as our CFO Bjørgaard mentioned. When I supported that exception clause earlier in discussion 2 weeks ago, my thinking was, what am I willing to tax for? And so I wanted to tax. That's how I kind of thought about it in my mind. And it was things that are aligned with council strategic priorities. And also, and those are the ones that we had said to the community forest that we were going to prioritize this fall. And the other rationale, and so Friends of Cathet is actually supporting youth. However, my view and the view of staff is that it doesn't align with council policy because we do not contribute money to operations. If we did, it would open up the grant possibilities to many other organizations. And in order to be administratively fair to all community organizations, we should align with the purpose of the policy. So while I support the work that these organizations do, again, when I'm looking holistically at the financial picture and we would draw from, I cannot support the amendment at this time. Thank you.
So Councillor Palm and then the mayor.
Yes, so thank you, Chair. So just so that I don't lose my place in the order, because Councillor Elliott hasn't got a chance to speak on the original motion if we go back to it, and I haven't spoke, I want to make sure that we get a chance.
That is correct.
If we're going back there.
Yes.
But to Councillor Doubt's motion that is now on the floor, I seconded his motion because, as I said at Committee of the Whole, I've spent a large part of my time in Powell River dealing with youth as a teacher for over 40 years, and I'm not going to stop supporting youth. And I appreciate the 250 token amount, which is a token because the original ask was $1 million to support Foundry. But I support the 250, even though no other municipality, and from what I hear in BC, is using taxpayers' dollars to do such. But here we're different. We look after our own. So I support the 250 in this intake because I've talked to the Community Forest Board, and the reason they didn't initiate and support it is because they thought the Foundry is not ready because of building permits, because of other grants they're applying for. And I've even been told that if they get their future grants, which will be substantial from the government, they may not even have to use the 250 that is in this motion. So there's a lot of question marks around where we are. Are we ready for the funds? I don't know. There's some questions, okay? But I'm willing to support Councillor Doubt's motion tonight to move the ball forward on Foundry. And I'm not here talking about hypotheticals, as Councillor Isaacson referenced. I'm talking about reality and facts and where we are. There is a substantial amount of money in the forestry reserve that can be used to better our community, as they've done for the last 17 years, supporting all those great volunteers in our community that bring more money to the table and stretch community forest dollars so that we've rebuilt this town. That's what's happened. Don't ever lose sight of the volunteer movement that built Powell River, because that's how it got built back in the day. And we're asking for the same thing right now through Councillor Dout's motion to support all these great volunteer organizations that work diligently to build and foster this community. And I'm very happy to see the youth here tonight, because you need to hear this. And we will get behind you and help you, even though other communities aren't doing so. So I wholeheartedly support Councillor Dout's motion to work with our Community Forest Board, not turn them away and say we're not following your guidance, because they did all the work to recommend the 14 recommendations that were on the table. And just because we've added 250 through Foundry, they should not drop off. And we should not be disregarding the work by our Community Forest Board that's gone on for 17 years to then followed their recommendations. So I don't want to get into table. I will ask some other questions when we get back to the original motion if this is defeated, because I'm not happy about the original motion, and you can probably tell that. But I fully support the motion on the floor to move this community forward. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Elliott, on the amended motion.
You're muted.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry about that. So I have a couple of concerns about this motion. One of them is administrative, and it involves how governments need to conduct themselves for fairness. And so what was different this time around is the community forest, through the working group, asked for input from council as to what council wanted to see for the grant applications. And council put a motion forward that included a budget for the fall intake and priorities that they were wanting the community force to consider when they were coming up with their recommendations. And also, we're still requiring that we follow the original policy guidance that we've had from before. So some of the projects on the list have nothing to do, are not being taken out because of the Foundry. They are being taken out for various reasons because they did not fit either the policy, the original policy, or the guidance made through a motion of council back in, I believe it was September. And so could have been October. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact date, but we had an actual motion from council that applied to these applications. And while I work very, very hard to do communications, improve our situation with the community forest, much of the improvements we've made in this process are to do with the committee that we all sit on and are trying to align ourselves. So if we are going to make decisions about processes and then not follow them, that is an administrative problem for governments not following through with their own policy guidelines or what have you when it comes to distributing money. And the motion that we made was that for this fall grant intake, that we would be wanting applications that were about health facilities, or as Councillor Isaacson said, sorry, my throat is causing me an issue here. As Councillor Isaacson pointed out, recreation culture that was specific to youth and or reconciliation was part and is consistent with our strategic goals. So if we ignore those and bring in projects that do not fit any of those criteria, it's an administrative problem. We shouldn't be doing that. We also should not be exceeding our budgets that we created for this section. And some of these projects, in particular, Friends of Cathet, is about operational expenses. It's not capital. And so that's not appropriate for this window. The Timberline Fine Arts was brought up as staff as being an issue that there are issues with the city-owned building that were not ready to go forward and needed sorting out. One of those projects was the community forest themselves said that they would actually prefer to do it through their operations rather than do it through a grant. But if the city wanted to do it through a grant, then they could. And so that was kind of the recommendation at the time. And we felt that it was probably more appropriate for them to do it through their operations. So it isn't as simple as that. I would love to say that the accountability for sticking to our own rules rests with the community forest and we should just accept all recommendations as is, but that's not actually true. The council is accountable for making sure we stick to our own rules. In the community forest, volunteers are doing an excellent job of putting forward recommendations, but it's the council that's accountable for making sure that we're sticking to what we said. And some of those recommendations are outside of what we asked for. And that makes it our job to enforce that. When it comes to the Foundry grant, I found that much of the interaction that normally happens through community granting wasn't happening in this case. And I had advice through the working group and in direct conversation with community forest volunteer members of the board that their preference was for the city council to engage and figure out whether we wanted to do a grant there, and that they didn't intend to sort of stick their nose into it in that way, not because they didn't support it, but they thought that we were better informed, better in contact with, and better suited to make a recommendation toward the Foundry. And so we, of course, did that. And so there are many other reasons for decisions for this. And I think that I would agree to maybe accept some of the recommendations on the list, but some of them are right outside the mandate for the community forest. Even though they're awesome things to do, we can't just ad hoc bring in things that are outside of the criteria for the community forest, such as they being mostly capital in nature, because our heart wants us to that time. We have to stick to our own rules. And so that's my issue with this. I think if we're going to come up with rules, we need to follow them.
Thank you. So I'm going to speak to the amended motion, which I support. I've heard some opposition to the amended motion based on speculation and self-interpretation of issues that have come before and interpretations of what is the definition of an acceptable project for community forest fund. So I will support the amendment, and I will also talk to the main motion, hopefully as amended. I think everybody's had an opportunity. Councillor Doubt.
Yeah, just an opportunity to close out and rebut and reply to some of the debate. I think there's two important issues that we need to deal with. One is that I've talked about before, is we have appointed a group to do work for the city, and that is the Community Forest Board. We've asked them to make recommendations to the city, to vet applications, to vet the processes, and make recommendations. It's not a small thing to ask. It's not a little bit of work. They put a lot of heart into it, a lot of effort into it, a lot of work in the community to make those recommendations, and they made the recommendations to council. Council decided to change those. Okay? The other effect is we've got all of these lists that I've read, of community organizations that are asking for money from the community forest recommending that they get them. It's not simply a cash grant. These are all groups of volunteers in the community. When they get a cash grant, it allows them to go back and work with all of the members of their groups. And I think if you look at all of the things in all of the community forest grants, you're touching on just about every human being in the city of Powell River who does something for their community, gets some assistance and some help from the community forest. So while I like the idea of helping more people than the community forest recommended, I don't like the idea of rejecting grants to organizations that make so much of a difference to our community. I was talking to somebody else, another volunteer in the community the other day, and talking about the fact that it's a nasty world out there. And you hear a lot of anger and a lot of confusion going on in the public. But when it comes down to the people of Powell River, they're always there. You guys, the people of Powell River, are always there to help others in the community. And that's what I think the community forest is about. And it inspires me actually to be there. I'm saying, why don't we include everybody, broaden the tent, as they say, include the Foundry and include these other deserving groups. Cost another $250,000. We're going to have to work through a lot of $250,000s between now and when we approve the budget. And I hope everybody will come for our upcoming budget discussions because they're important. But I think, I was going to just vote against these motions tonight, but I'm proposing this amendment so that we can provide those many volunteer groups in the community with support and support the Foundry as well. It's a middle ground, and I hope we get enough support. Thank you.
Councilor Pond.
I'm going to try to tone down my delivery. Please excuse me for getting a little rambunctious previously. I just have to bring to your attention one comment that Councillor Elliott was referring to, and that is she has to safeguard public in terms of these requests. But I can assure you that the 8 that were turned down, at least 6 of them have been previously supported by our community forest. The precedent has already been set. We're not changing procedure. We are just taking the recommendations of community forest supporting these groups over a long duration of time. The only ones I'm not certain about is the Gillies Bay Tennis Court, but I know we've supported the tennis courts south of town in the regional district previously. And the Kelly Creek Community Church, I'm not sure if we have supported that previously. Those are the only 2. The rest, the other 6, we have been previously supported, which are Friends of Cathat, Timberlane Fine Arts, Salmon Society, which I received an email from. They have to go out and try to borrow money now in order to move forward. And all these groups will have to do the same thing. When I saw that email from Mr. Shane Dobler, it just hit my heart. The cycling community, we've supported them through Mount Mahoney and other trails in our community previously. Powell River Curling Club, new generator, $75,000. That's only half the cost. They come to the floor with the other 75 grand, which they have done every time that we provided them with funds from our community forest. They stretch the dollars, in other words. So I don't think I have to say, I'm going to say more later if we get back to the original motion, but for now, I would really like to see this motion on the floor pass. And one other comment that Councillor Elliott made that I support wholeheartedly, she said she could support some of these that have been turned down. Well, if that's the case, Councillor Elliott, Your working group, which you are on, along with myself, the mayor, and 3 members of our community forest board, make the recommendations of these 14 and brought them forward for discussion at our council table. If you think some of these should be included, Councillor Elliott, perhaps we should take this request back to our working group for further comment, because at the moment we're only using $476,000 out of the $640,000 that was allocated by the working group.
Councillor Palm, I'm just going to interrupt. I don't think that's related to the amended motion. So we have an amended motion that's been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, the amended motion is defeated. We'll now go for the main motion. We'll start with Councillor Almeida. Any?
No further comment from anything different than what's been shared already, Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Isaac.
Mr. Mayor,
The main motion,
excuse me, a point of order.
Yes.
You were going around the table. You got to me and I made a motion.
You're-
Councillor Palm had wanted to make
You're
sure that
absolutely right.
Councillor Elliott had an opportunity to go in a rotation too.
Correct. So we're back at the main motion. Councillor Palm. Councillor Elliott, would you like to comment on the main motion?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've pointed out a number of things that I wanted to say in my last speech, but I would like to add that we did work hard at the committee to come up with something we agreed with at that point in time. So I'm not going to rehash all the work we did at that point in time, but I am supportive of the community forest and their board. And I also feel that when council does take the time to make motions that are intended to impact their recommendations, and I can't see how they did, I think we need to take some more time to improve that process for sure. But for this grant intake, I'm in favor of this motion and getting better written clarity around the way we do this come into the spring with better guidance for that, so that we can all improve how we land on these types of decisions.
So, excuse me. So I cannot support this motion, and I'll lay out why. First of all, as I indicated previously, my interpretation of what adds value to this community and what our priorities are differ significantly from those that support this motion. Secondly, with regard specifically to the Foundry motion, I think unlike other councillors, I've done extensive research on Foundry, who funds Foundry, and the relationship between the provincial health authorities and cities with regard to issues dealing with mental health. And very simply put, in talking with the Foundry organizations around the province, the normal mode is to either have a health authority fund and lead the development of the project, or to have a society like the John Howard Society, which for over 100 years have been doing this type of work within the communities. So what we have here is Powell River has a decision to make. Do we continue to download more expenses from the provincial government? And if we do so, it's simply telling them, whenever you have a project that you don't feel like funding, come to the Powell River City Council and they will fund it. This to me is not consistent with the responsibilities of elected officials. We've already had discussions. Anybody who attended the special committee meeting yesterday knows that we have one of the highest tax rates in the province. And those who were there yesterday should note that those figures do not include what individuals who own property in Powell River will pay to the Cathet region also. So we could likely be looking at 10 plus for the next 5 years in terms of tax rate increases. And so if we pass this motion, we're saying to all of our residents who pay taxes, we're quite happy downloading provincial responsibilities onto yourself. And to me, that is unacceptable and it's inconsistent with the responsibilities of elected officials. Therefore, I will not be voting in favor of this motion. Do we have anybody else that wishes?
Worship, I think you bypassed me.
Oh, Councillor Palm.
Thank you, Your Worship. So here's where we are. We have the original motion on the floor, cutting out 8 of the grants that were recommended by our Community Forest Board and overturned at this table, even though the working group was in agreement. And those organizations are losing out. We have had a motion previously on the floor tonight, which supports the foundry, adding it to the previous recommendations from your Community Forest Board. And the Community Forest Board said to me, we don't mind supporting the foundry if that's what council wishes. So I'm just saying they're very respectful of our community and our community groups. We should be as kind and generous and respectful of our Community Forest Board volunteers as they are of the rest of this rebuild of our community. That's what's facing us here tonight. Because what we should do right now is amend this motion, and I may make the motion, send this back to the working group so that we can, as Councillor Elliott said, we don't have to wait till the spring. We can do it next week. As I've talked to the Community Forest Board, they're available. Our working group can get together, hash it out, and take some of these 8 that have been taken off the table, add them to this list to top it up to 640. Right now, we're only at 476, and make more people happy and whole. That's what should be done tonight, if you're thinking decently, instead of just slapping them across the cheek.
Point of order, Chair.
I'm going to ask.
Sorry, Councillor Elliott. I've got to ask
Whoa, just a second.
a particular question.
Okay. I'm going to ask our corporate officer. We have a motion on the floor. We've had one amendment to the motion that was defeated. Can there be a second amendment on the motion before the main motion is voted on?
Normally, Your Worship, that would be the case, but under your council procedure bylaw, it only provides for one amendment of a main motion. So unfortunately, you're stuck with only one amendment of the main motion.
Thank you for that clarification. So any other comments on the main motion before I call the vote on the main motion? Okay, all in favor of the main motion? Opposed? Councillor Elliott, I didn't see your vote.
I was in favor.
The motion passes 4-3, and I would like the recorded as opposition to that. Okay, we now move to item 14, which is rise and report. The motion is that council make the following city appointments to the Powell River Public Library Board of Trustees for terms commencing January 2026. 1, reappoint Patrick Brabazon and appoint Siobhan Brown, each for 2-year terms. And 2, appoint Councillor Almeida as a councillor representative and Councillor Isaacson as an alternate for a 1-year term. So we'll now move to public clarification. Members of the public may ask questions to clarify items discussed during the meeting for a maximum of 2 minutes. Questions only.
Hi, Catherine Yorlofson. I have a question regarding Appendix D from the forestry. And on page 2, item 5. So the forestry covered incremental costs of 3 new vehicles. So my question is, I was under the impression that the city was committed to electrifying all of our vehicles. And so in the budget that was passed in March of this year, as you know, there were many, many vehicles. So are the figures in there reflective of the cost for them to be electric vehicles? Or are we going to have to top up every one of those vehicles somehow through the community fund, through this fund or some other fund? What's in that budget?
Through the chair, so those 3 electric vehicles have been purchased. So they're actually in the fleet now. And that expenditures will be closed at the end of the year. So hopefully that answers your question.
No, it doesn't, because in the budget that went through in March, there was like 14 trucks and a couple garbage trucks and some dump trucks and everything else. And we have, I believe, a commitment at the city that we should be electrifying, that we should always be considering electric. So did the cost in those budget items, were they for electric vehicles so that we don't need these incremental ones when we purchase?
I can answer your question through the chair. There's 3 electric vehicles that were purchased this year. And the rest of the vehicles were or are traditional gasoline or diesel. The way that we make a decision on what's electric is based on the lifetime of the vehicle, what the cost is over the lifetime, including purchase price, fuel, and or electricity. So we compare the two. At the moment, I would say the sweet spot is probably at pickup trucks and vans, and less can be electrified, and it makes sense, and it's cost incentivized to do so. However, anything bigger than that is not cost effective for us. So we still have to go with gas or diesel for the bigger vehicles, but the smaller ones, pickup trucks, vans, cars, we go with electric.
So every time, as I see what you're saying, every time we actually go to purchase, let's say the truck or the van, the ones that are easy to do, we are going to see an incremental cost because the budget didn't include that. That's what you're saying?
Through the chair, the budgets have been updated now, so they don't actually have incrementals anymore. There might be some leftover ones, but I believe we're done at the end of this year with any incrementals for electrics. Anything moving forward in the future should have the full cost in the budget without incrementals.
Okay.
Is there a further comment from the audience? Oh, I'm sorry, a question.
Yeah, questions. John Brown,
Thank you, Councillor Doubt.
Item 13.1, which had all this discussion on the forest grants and recommendation and was accepted the way it's set up in this memo to us, reads that council approve a fall 2026 Powell River Community Forest Grant for $250,000. Well, that's not coming out of this community forest grants. It's coming out of next year's community forest grants.
Yeah, what it says.
So I think we got $250,000 extra. We could go back and give everybody that lost their grants, the grants back.
Thank you.
Question, Chair. Through the mayor to staff, I remember when we made this motion 2 weeks ago, and that was an error, and the intention was it was corrected, but it wasn't corrected in this. And so, is there a way to correct that? Because the intention was you have a great eye, good catch. The intention was 2025, and so how do we correct that? Through the mayor to staff.
So from a procedural point of view, the typo was brought to the attention of council sitting as committee of the whole. It was acknowledged, and unfortunately, administrative error failed to pick up that typo when this was brought forward to the council agenda. But it remains a procedural error that can be corrected as a typographical error. The intent, I don't think anybody in this room this evening had any misconception that we were talking about 2026 grants. So the intent of council was to deal with this on the basis that we're dealing with the 2025 fall grants for this this matter, and so it is correctable as a typographical error.
Thank you for coming forward.
So this was released to the public in this form. So do you have to start all over again do it to 2025? Because this is what you released to the public to say we're voting on. You had a discussion on it and you had a vote on it. You can't just say, oh, well, we're going to change the date.
We'll defer to our corporate officer, who will again provide the advice, which I believe is probably going to be the same as what he just provided. But
yeah, a typographical error can be corrected. It's not fatal to the motion that was passed.
thank you.
Actually, me as a public, I thought you guys were talking 26. That's public over here talking about 20.
And it's now been clarified and will be clarified in the printed material. Thank you.
Okay, I got one more question. It started to rain out here in Winters here. What's happening with the bus shelters at the Plaza Mall? They were discussed months ago, and I drive by, it's pouring rain, people are standing out there with their bags. It's a mess.
I'm going to ask for clarification, but I don't believe this was on the agenda today, so we cannot address it.
I can
Through our corporate officer, we do have procedurals. We'll ask for.
I was just going to note that council earlier in this meeting approved minutes which reference the 2025 fall grants. Go ahead.
Through the chair, correct if there's a question about something that's not on the agenda, it's not permitted as per the procedure bylaw.
It's on the agenda. In the agenda.
Page 4. I'm going to leave that to our corporate officer to address.
Your worship, it is on the agenda. Sorry, I was just clarifying your question, but yes, it's in one of the appendices of the report if council wants to speak to it.
So that's consistent with the definition of our question period. So, all right, we'll ask Councillor Doubt.
I'm kind of getting behind the evolution here. What can you tell me where on tonight's agenda the city bus shelters at the mall show up?
Through the chair, the actual clarification language in the agenda says members of the public may ask questions to clarify items discussed during the meeting. I don't think that the bus shelters were discussed or any funding for the bus shelter. So I would say it's not actually part of the conversation, even though it's an appendix of a report that was discussed at a previous meeting. I think that's too broad of an interpretation of what we're trying to do here.
Thank you. So
if the bus shelters are not on any agendas, how do we know what's going on and what's holding them up?
you can write a letter to our chief administrative officer and he will get a prompt response back to you.
Just
a second.
Mr. Mayor, I could suggest that you could look at the previous videos of council meetings because they were discussed recently.
Thank you. Councillor Almeida, further.
Just going to say it's worded right here, Appendix D, page 4, plans to complete the shelters in 2026. So we don't need to answer the question because it's in the agenda package.
I'm going to refer to our chief administrative officer as to the intent of this section of our meeting.
Again, I'm reading what the actual agenda says. It's to clarify items discussed during the meeting for a maximum of 2 minutes. So items discussed.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. The discussion tonight for me has revealed the reality that there seems to be a major dysfunction happening in the communication with council and the Community Forest Board. Because, for example, if you reject 8 out of 14 recommendations, that tells me something's not working. That tells me, and I don't know if that means that you've lost confidence in the Forest Board, because certainly if they're coming forward and over 50% of what they're recommending is not being accepted. Well, the question is, my question is, and secondly, with the working group, all the recommendations came forward with approval of the working group, and yet part of the working group voted against them. So it causes me to say there's something not working here. Is council prepared to relook at the whole process, to meet with the Community Forest Board and figure out how it can actually work together in a way that avoids the kind of thing that has happened here this evening?
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. I just want to say that recommendations were formed outside of the working group. The working group worked on process matters, and we did not create recommendations that were supported by the working group. That wasn't how the process worked. And part of that is because we were discussing the process for which we would like criteria to be considered during making recommendations. The recommendations from the board are strictly from the Community Forest Board, and we tried to set up a process that would help us align better. And since it's the first time we used that process, we're maybe not good at it yet. But I do agree with you. We need to do better work there. But it isn't true that the working group approved the recommendations before they came forward.
Councillor Doubt. Yep.
Yeah, and I just want to make it clear that I don't speak for council. This is my answer alone to you, Mr. Craig, and that is that I think there is obviously a lack of communication or a failure in the communication between the Community Forest Board and council, and I think that's something we all have to work on to get a better result for the community. That's my opinion, mine alone.
Thank you.
I have a question on a clarification of the prior question. So for the future, are we saying that if the council doesn't actually discuss something, we can't question it?
That is
So for
correct.
example, just an example, we're going to have a budget. The budget's going to come forward. It's going to have hundreds of items in it. There's no way during that council meeting that all of those things are going to be discussed. And so based on what now we're saying, that means we as a public could not then ask a question on a document that was presented to us just because you didn't discuss it? Is that what we're saying?
No,
That's what he said, didn't he?
no, I don't
Oh.
think that, I think you cherry picked some of what he said. And I will ask the Chief Administrative Officer again to state in a very simple why.
Again, I'm reading what's in the agenda. Members of public may ask questions to clarify items discussed during the meeting for a maximum of 2 minutes. So Powell River Community Forest grants were discussed. So you could talk about Powell River Community Forest grants, but what the question was timing for bus shelters, which was not actually in that report. It wasn't about timing for bus shelters. Bus shelters were noted in an attachment of a report that was in there, but nothing about timing. So again, it's stretching what, just because something is in an agenda and you want to take it and sort of run with it on a different angle, that's different from what you're asking, which is if there's something on the agenda that's being discussed, and it's the broad discussion, not the specific discussion of that exact item.
Well, you let me ask a question about the e-version once, and it's the same issue.
I didn't let you do anything. I don't have the control to decide whether you do or not. The chair of the meeting makes that decision. I was asked for advice, which I've just given.
Okay. I have to say I don't really understand this answer. I really don't.
Well,
because there'll come a time where, for example, in the budget, where there's many, many items, and they all come in these appendixes, pages and pages of appendixes. Those items will not get discussed in detail, but I might have a question about one of them or two of them. And based, I think, on what you're interpreting, which could be the truth, I would not be able to ask a question.
no, that is not what you should be hearing. What you should be hearing is if we have the budget as an agenda item, then there will be a discussion on various issues around that. If you choose to come forward at the end of the meeting and ask a question on anything that was involved in the budget, it will be answered.
But this report that I got today was attached to your agenda. It says that it's about to provide the community whole status update, financial update on the reserve funds. This is a completed city project or in progress. So I guess, okay,
Anybody else? Step forward.
I have a question, and it is in regards to
Microphone.
our new CFO. And so last year with the community forest funding, there was a change made where the funds that were handed out would be tax. It would equal a taxation amount, like an increase. So tonight, the CFO, and I acknowledge that he wasn't here last year, but he indicated that they're grants and it's coming from a reserve, and there is no taxation associated with giving out the grants of the Powell River Community Forest Fund. Can there be clarification on that?
Councilor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. The current CFO might have used different wording than our previous CFO, but the one thing he referred to was an opportunity cost. And I believe that's what CFO Dennison was referring to in the same way, was if we use $500,000 for community forest grants, that is $500,000 that can't be used to city projects. So it's always an opportunity cost. that if we were to make that decision, eventually there's a project in the city that will need to get done that will then need to be taxed for. So that was the comparison, as I understood it.
Okay, because I understood it that he was saying that, well, no, no taxation is associated with the Powell River Community Grants. Because last year it was accounted for that way. So this year it's not. So
No, it wasn't. It was accounted for. It was compared to. It was the same. Again, it was the same percentage. It was never saying that you're going to get a direct increase, but it means it was meaning that there's the opportunity cost that if you take away $500,000 extra now, you don't have that next year for other community projects that for those projects you're going to need to tax for.
Okay, all right, we'll look for that. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Roger Whitaker. I'm going to try and frame everything in a question. The first question is, do you have any idea how overjoyed I am that Councillor Doubt listened carefully to Mr. Hemphill and saw that he had two meetings with the Foundry, and the CAO had one meeting with the Foundry and found out they didn't meet the criteria. And then, do you have any idea how overjoyed I am that Mr. Dowd heard that and tried to find a way, as he called it, to broaden the tent? So I can't imagine you would have any idea how overjoyed I am at that. Second question, does any of you have the ability to tell me what an opportunity cost is without looking at your grok or various forms?
I will give you an example.
Please speak up, sir. I'm very hard of hearing.
This is an opportunity cost. If the city has to shut down the pool during the winter to help balance the budget, as opposed to using money from the forest reserve, then that answers your question.
Not quite, sir. Thank you, though, for the answer that you gave. Opportunity cost could be considered napkin talk, how things are decided at the table when you're in a discussion, and they're not supposed to enter into a budget. I'm not an accountant, nor do I play one on TV, but as soon as I heard that last year, I went home immediately and looked it up, as I do with all financial words that I don't understand. And I found out that opportunity cost would be like me using that logic that you just gave me, filing taxes that said I should have made $10 million last year, but I didn't, so I'm going to claim a loss of $10 million. Thank you for the refund. Not the way it works. And that's what the word is being used here. Words are very important. The meaning of each word is very important. And the third question I want to ask, actually there'll be another one right after it. The third question I want to ask, how come if a while ago, it's not tax money, it's grants was said at this table. And yet when grant money comes in, all of a sudden it's tax money. And the fourth question I have, which I might have just forgot. Darren, I forgot it. So anyway, so those are my three questions. Thank you very much. Mr. Palm, you had your hand up. I don't have to chair, but I'm just saying.
Your Worship, I have a couple comments I'd like to
Sure.
clarify.
Speak into the microphone, Councillor Palm.
Sorry?
Can you
Speak right into
the
it.
microphone.
Thank you.
You'll be able to hear me. So first of all, let's talk about the comment that our CFO made tonight. And I believe I heard him correctly when he said the community forest money is in a reserve and can be taken out of the reserve, so it's not tied to taxation. That's what I heard. And I believe that to be the case. Now, CFO can correct me if I heard him wrong.
The chair, that was the correct wording. But if that reserve money is not used for that purpose, it could be repurposed and used elsewhere within the overall financial picture of the city. I hope that helps.
In terms of the bylaw of the community forest. Yes, I understand that. Are you finished, sir?
I think so.
So I need to clarify a comment that was made because I'm in the wrong of making a comment earlier tonight, and I want to clarify that for everyone. when I said that the recommendations from the working group were overturned. Councillor Elliott is absolutely correct that the working group did not rubber stamp the recommendations that came forward at a later meeting with the Community Forest Board that she attended. And that's when the Community Forest Board sent those 14 recommendations, but it was based on the dialogue that your working group had previous to those recommendations. And I just have to state for the for everyone that when we talked as a working group, the Foundry was pointed out as not being ready to receive the funds. That's why they weren't on the recommendations. The other 14 were all talked about and then came forward at a later date, and there was no mention of them that they should not be included from the working group. So I just wanted to declare what Councillor Elliott said. There was no rubber stamp from the working group, but there was no objection to those 14 items.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody online? Oh, could we have? Sorry, is somebody? Oh, Mr. Galinsky, you're so quiet. I knew from the vibes I was getting from you that was the situation, but unfortunately I was the only one getting that vibe. All right.